Thank you, AIOC, for giving me the opportunity, and special thanks to Dr. Pranav for giving me the opportunity to present over here. And my topic is fundus fluorescent angiography. So what actually is FFA? So it refers to photography of the fluorescent dye in the retinal vasculature to study different kinds of retinal vascular pathophysiological conditions. So basically it uses the principle of fluorescence, and the fluorescent dye diffuses out of the fenestrated vessels of the choriocapillaries, but not out of the healthy endothelial cells of the non-fenestrated retinal vessels and RPE. Therefore, it is very suitable for studying the retinal vascular disease. So we have to be aware about the exciter filter, which filters out the which filters the other lights except the blue light, and the barrier filter, which filters out the rest of the light except the light in the yellow-green wavelength. We should be aware of the pseudofluorescence, which occurs when there is a mismatch between exciter and the barrier filter. So the dose is basically 10 ml of 5% solution, or 5 ml of 10% solution, 3 ml of 25%, and it is eliminated by the liver and the kidneys over 24 hours. So when we inject fluorescein, about 80% is bound to the plasma proteins and the blood cells. Only 20% is available, which is free and is used in imaging. So basically, this is the outlay. We use the excitation energy, and the fluorescent is it is excited and it emits energy in the yellow-green wavelength, which is photographically documented and which we see as a FFA photo. So coming to the sequence of the events. So we should have a patient identification photograph, a color photograph, a red-free photograph of the posterior pole. We have to insert the scalp vein needle and slowly inject over 4 to 6 seconds, not more than that, because it will lead to dilution, and then the fluorescence would be very faint for us to see. So we should have a pre-injection photograph and then start fluorescent photography. Before at the time of injection, we should be aware about the side effects of the fluorescent dye. So it can range from mild to severe. Mild is simply nausea, vomiting, pruritus, sneezing, which can be managed by antihistaminics. Moderates are usually urticaria and other kind of allergic reaction, which needs to be managed again by the antihistaminic and paracetamol. But we should be aware about the severe allergic reaction, which can range from bronchospasm to seizures, and we should have a crash cart ready. So what are the indications for FFA? So it is diagnostic, especially for retinal vascular disorders. We use it to follow up to monitor the disease activity, and also is used to prognosticate the disease activity. So relative contraindications being renal impairment, the anginal instability, severe asthma, and pregnancy. So how does a normal angiogram look like? The appearance of dye, it occurs earlier in young age where there is hyperdynamic circulation, approximately 10 to 12 seconds. In old age, it usually takes longer, 12 to 15 seconds. And this arm retina time is very important because in cases of cardiovascular diseases, in cases of ICA occlusion, this time prolongs. So there are 6 phases of angiogram: pre-arterial, arterial, arteriovenous, venous, recirculation, and late. So this is a pre-arterial phase where we can see the patchy lobular filling of the choroid, which is known as choroidal flush. And this happens, the retina starts, usually the retinal vessel starts to appear, the filling starts 1 second after the choroidal flush. And in this, we can see there is a filling of the cilio-retinal artery, which is a branch of the posterior ciliary arteries. Coming to the arterial phase, we can see the filling of the arteries over here. In the arteriovenous, we can see the laminar flow in the veins. And this means the arteries have filled, the capillaries have filled, and the veins have just started to fill. And in the venous phase, we can see the whole of the veins also have filled. So the peak phase is approximately around 20 to 25 seconds after a rapid fluorescent injection. This is very important as the perifoveal capillary network is highlighted, and we can very well see the FAZ over here. The transit phase is usually after 30 seconds, and it denotes the first complete passage of the fluorescence. So the recirculation phase starts, and here the elimination and the dilution of the dye is starting to occur. Therefore, the fluorescence has started to fade away. So the late usually is 10 to 30 minutes, and it denotes nearly extinction of the fluorescence. So this is the time, phase, and the event which is occurring. So choroidal flush, it denotes the dye reaching the short posterior ciliary arteries. The arterial phase, which starts after a second of the choroidal flush, it denotes the dye reaching the central retinal arteries. The capillary phase, the capillaries are perfused. The AV and the venous phase denotes the filling of the veins, and the late denotes the recirculation, dilution, and the elimination of the dye. The timings are very important, as AV phase can be prolonged in cases of ocular ischemic syndrome and in cases of central retinal vein occlusion. So how do we interpret an angiogram? So before we go, there are certain steps which we should follow while interpreting a FFA. We should have patient identification. We should have the concerned eye labeled. We should have a color photograph for clinical correlation. We should have a description of the angiogram. We should have a phase and a time sequence. And we should be aware about the level of pathology, whether it is retinal, subretinal, or intraretinal, preretinal, or the choroidal at the level of choroid, and we should have a DD in our mind. So the angiographic description of the lesion are usually classified as hyperfluorescence or the hyperfluorescence. So the hypo can be due to the vascular filling defect or blocked fluorescence. Hyper can be due to window defect, vascular abnormality, pooling, staining, and leakage. Basically, the difference between pooling, staining, and leakage is pooling is it is the collection of the dye in a defined anatomical space, as happens in NSD. Staining, the fluorescence increases, but the intensity and the size goes on increasing. The leakage, also the size and the intensity increases over time. The autofluorescence, this is a photo of angiogram of where we can see the normal fovea, which is avascular, because the normal fovea, which is dark due to avascularity, and because of the melanin, the hyperfluorescence is blocked from the choroidal vasculature, and also the increased xanthophyll density blocks the fluorescence from the deeper choroidal vessels. So why is it important to look at the normal fovea? Because fovea is enlarged and irregular with capillary budding, which we see here in cases of ischemic maculopathy. So a fovea which is in typical ischemic maculopathy is not going to respond well to anti-VEGF, and the patient is going to have a poor visual acuity despite adequate treatment in cases of diabetic retinopathy. So optic disc is generally hyperfluorescent because of the posterior supply from the posterior ciliary system. This is a case of a optic disc drusen which is autofluorescing, and the flex of the fundus albipunctatus, which is undergoing autofluorescence. So in cases of hyperfluorescence, it can be retinal edema from the incompetent retinal vessels, RP detachment leading to pooling of the dye in the space, sensory retinal detachment, again leading to pooling in the spaces, window defect leading to increased transmission from the choroidal vasculature. So leakage across the blood retinal barrier from the inner retinal layer, we can see there's leakage of the dye, which is happening in cases of NVE. So this is a case where we can see there is leakage and there is a lacy network, which happens in cases of classic CNVM. So there is pooling in fluid spaces, as happens in CSCR, and we see pooling in the spaces. So the staining occurs in cases of abnormal drusens, or in cases of scar tissues. We see there is staining of the staining due to scar marks. So and increased transmission as occurs in geographic atrophy. So coming to the hypofluorescence, hypofluorescence can occur when there is non-perfusion due to retinal vessels, when there is blockage of the transmission by the blood or pigmented RPE or by choroidal pigments. So basically, hypofluorescence can occur due to blockage by the media opacities like vitreous hemorrhage or at the level of the lens or at the level of the cornea. Pigment accumulation can block the fluorescence. The pigments basically blood and the melanin. And the filling defect, basically the retinal vessels, which we can see the vessels, they are not being perfused, and we can see the filling defect over here. So coming to the case examples. So this was a case of a 40-year-old male who complains of recurrent blurring of vision with metamorphopsia, and her vision was 6/12. So apparently the FAZ appears normal, but we see a slight leakage over here. And this leakage is increasing with increasing phases of angiogram. So this is in blot appearance as it happens in CSCR. So one of the other appearance is a leak which is ascending vertically, and we can see with it is going to ascend vertically like an umbrella pattern, and this is called as smokestack appearance. So why is it important to know about these leaks in CSCR? Because it helps us to localize the leak and then do a focal laser in a case of recurrent CSCR. So this is a case of a 75-year male who presented with diminution of vision for more than 6 months. Now we see on a fundus autofluorescence, we see a high autofluorescing margin, and we see that there is a lacy leakage in the early phases, and which is increasing in size and intensity over the increasing phases of angiogram. This is classical CNVM. Coming to the this fundus photograph, we see exudation along with hemorrhage and intraretinal fluid. And we see that there is no hyperfluorescence in the early phases, but it is increasing as we increase over the phases, as we proceed in the phases of the angiogram. So this is a classic case. This is a case of occult CNVM. So now we see that there is a narrowing of the arcades and leakage from this area, and this denotes a mechanical traction over this area by the ERM leading to leakage. And in this, it is very important to identify the leakage because the treatment is surgical by the level of the ERM. So we see NVD over here in the inferior part of the disc, and when we proceed on, we see NVD which is leaking. We see a filling defect. We see a CNP areas. We see a shunting of the vessels here in the between the healthy and the non-healthy area. So it is important to note all these things in our angiogram, because this is where we are going to use targeted photocoagulation to laser off all the capillary non-perfusion area to stop the pathophysiology in this process. So this is another example of the tributary vein, branch retinal vein occlusion. So one of the important places where angiogram finds an important application is PDR. So any cases of severe NPDR needs to undergo a FFA to rule out any pre-proliferative changes. So we see a blocked hyperfluorescence due to the hemorrhage here, and we can see multiple microaneurysms here, and we can see a leakage which is going on increasing. So these are places of NVE. So the another place where it is important to note is macular edema, because in focal DME we can do focal lasers to seal off the uh, leaking points, whereas in diffuse DME we can go in for a modified grid laser. So this is a case of PFT, where the telangiectated vessels have straddled the horizontal raphe, and the leakage is increasing over time. So this is a classic ILM drape sign, and we can see the in the early stages, the fluorescence is increasing, and we can see the telangiectated vessels and the increasing leakage over time. So this is a case of where there is a vitreous haze, and we proceeded on with FFA. We can see the perivascular staining here at multiple places, and then we see leakage over in the periphery, and the non-perfusion areas. These all areas needs to be lasered over time. So these are the perivascular stain, and these are the non-perfusion areas, and we see there is a leakage when the vessel traverses over the non-perfused area. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shivani. That was a wonderful, exhaustive presentation on fundus fluorescein angiography. Two quick questions. Um, how do you relate, and what is the current situation in comparison to OCT? Where do you find FFA as of today? Because FFA basically is an invasive procedure, OCT being a non-invasive procedure. So how do you rate FFA as of today? Because 10 years back,
FFA has its own clinical implications, like in cases of severe NPDR, where we are suspicious of the patient may have PDR, the patients have to undergo FFA. In cases of recalcitrant macular edema, which is not responding to multiple anti-VEGF treatment, we need to have the imaging FFA in this patient, because we need to know about the non-perfusion areas, and we need to know about the leakage in these cases, and know about the leaking capillaries. In cases of recurrent CSCR, we need to know about the leaking points in the to laser of those areas, or we have to know about the sick RP in cases of recurrent CSCR. In cases of vasculitis, in cases of uvea, we need to have a FFA. So I think OCT being we have to go on, like we have to balance both these modalities, and they both have their own clinical importance in while managing retinal uvea and retinal vascular disorders.
and any pre-existing general condition in which it is contraindicated?
So pregnancy, it is contraindicated, and like it is a very dicey situation in cases of raised creatinine. But we can have adequate hydration and a nephrologic clearance, and then proceed on with FFA. It's not a straight away contraindication; it is a relative contraindication. So pregnancy, besides pregnancy, is good to go in every case after having a clearance from the concerned super specialty.
Do you need to have an anesthetist along with you when you are doing a fluoresceint angiography, or can you do it alone?
Sir, in ideal situation, yes. But if we have a crash cart ready, and if we are like ready for the resuscitation, then we can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Jayagopal, would you like to ask anything? Any of the